Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Algorand Developer Office Hours. I'm your host, Ryan Fox, developer advocate here at Algorand, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Aaron Martinez, founder of Headline Inc. and the company building the Pipeline UI, a library of React components. Now, the Algorand Foundation recently awarded Pipeline UI a development award for solving the on-ramp dilemma. And today we're going to learn what that means. And for you as a dApp developer and your users, those dApp users, will learn what the Pipeline UI library contains and why you want to use it in your upcoming Algorand app. So with that, I want to welcome to the stage Aaron Martinez, and I want you to tell us a little bit about what you're working on building on Algorand. Remind us where you're joining us from as well. Welcome, Aaron.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, how's it going? So I'm Aaron, and I'm based in San Antonio, Texas, and the rest of my team is in Austin, San Marcos, and Dallas, so we're all here in Texas. And yeah, we started working with the foundation a few months ago, and I think a really exciting solution to the on-ramp dilemma. So I'm just going to jump right into this. So what is the obstacle? What is the problem that we wanted to solve with this? And the Algorand Inc. CEO, Steve Kokonos, recently had a statement about this that was really interesting. He said that blockchains globally, there's 200,000 developers that are building with it. And there's about 20 million developers total. So until we can come up with a way to make the developer experience better, it's going to be hard for blockchains to reach the mainstream. So what is the obstacle to blockchain development for that group of 20 million developers? There's a steep on-ramp to use blockchain technology in web apps, but we think we have a solution, something that can make it way easier to start working to get off the ground running as quickly as possible. What we're doing is we're hard coding blockchain functions directly into React components. And the way we're doing this, we're breaking it down into a couple different pieces. So we have Pipeline, which is a JavaScript class, and it's essentially like a mini Algorand SDK. And we have Pipeline Express and we have Pipeline UI, which are two separate React component libraries. Pipeline Express is an extremely lean, limited features, but very, very quick to get off the ground running if you want to quickly spin up a dApp. And Pipeline UI is a full-featured component library with, I believe, 40 or so components right now. And the React library is derived from a common JavaScript class. It simplifies the process of enabling websites to incorporate Algorand transaction capabilities. Who are the target demographics, the target users for what we've built and what we're working on right now? So there's a couple different groups that we really wanted to focus on. And one of them is going to be like small businesses or people that are either unfamiliar with React or blockchains in general, but want to be able to start experimenting with incorporating it into their existing company. And another group is experienced developers who want to be able to rapidly build new web applications with Algorand functionality. Like, let's say they're coming from a different blockchain that has a different code base, and they, instead of like having to spend a couple of days just to try to like get off the ground running, now with what we've built, you can like start working on it in like 5 minutes basically. And the other group is enterprise innovators who want to be able to rapidly deploy demos. Like, let's say, for example, that you're working at a bank or something like that, and you want to demonstrate to the rest of your staff how y'all can start incorporating blockchain technology. But with Pipeline Express, for example, you can basically fork our repository and deploy a custom dApp in like 2 or 3 minutes with your own branding on it. Now, once we had determined what a solution could be for the on-ramp dilemma, we had to basically create a timeline. How are we going to get there? We started working with the foundation in March or April, essentially, and between April and June, we really wanted to pin down a couple of key objectives, and we started experimenting with the existing code base and the existing demos and documentation that was already available. And we started to like modify our objectives a little bit to try to really narrow it down. And then from June until the end of July, that's when we implemented essentially implemented our thesis and actually, created the components and created the code base to be able to support our solution for the on-ramp dilemma. And we broke it down into 4 pieces: the pipeline class, which is the SDK, the Pipeline UI and Pipeline Express component libraries, and the pipeline documentation site, which is kind of a separate beast entirely. And we presented it to the foundation at the end of July. And almost immediately after that, they started to do some Gitcoin bounties. And we got a bunch of incredible feedback already from developers that are already building demos with our code base. And so now we're in the refinement period where we're doing this basically this big presentation to the global Algorand community. And we're going to get even more feedback. We're going to add a couple new features before our full rollout. And then we're going to kind of segue into milestone 2 of the project. And it's going to get really exciting. What have we completed so far? What did we do with that first milestone? Well, we created a JavaScript class to simplify Algorand payments, ASA transfers, balance checks, and transaction fetching. We published 2 libraries of standard UI and Algorand-specific React components. We compiled an interactive website with live code examples to document library features. And we created and deployed fully functional demos that utilize Pipeline UI libraries. The first one we're going to look at is Pipeline class, basically a micro Algorand SDK. Now, what is it that this does exactly? Well, it's the foundational building block for all of the different demos and all of the different components and everything that we're working with. It functions largely hidden in UI Express, but it's still accessible. You can still modify it. And it also exists as a standalone thing that you can work with. And it has usability without the UI or Express if you, for example, are using vanilla JavaScript for your application. Why did we decide to create a new Algorand SDK? Well, there's a few things that we really wanted to point out here. We wanted to basically make it as light as possible because we're only using certain parts of the full Algorand code base right now. We don't need some of the functionality that we haven't built in yet. And as we expand, it'll expand as well. A big part, though, of what we did is we're using my Algo Connect as the primary signing method for transactions. And by doing that, we don't need all the built-in signing transaction capability of the standard Algorand SDK. So we can use our SDK for the specific blockchain calls that we need, and we use my Algo Connect to sign the transactions and everything. And here's a little bit of an overview over Pipeline class. It has one dependency, which is going to be my Algo Connect. It's written with vanilla JavaScript. It is a micro SDK, and it supports these limited Algorand functions at the moment. So you can switch between testnet and mainnet. You can connect to MyAlgo. You can check balances. You can send payments. You can send ASA transfers and get transaction IDs. And the way to think about it is there's 3 main functions that Pipeline class is going to be doing. So one is balance, and it's the ability to send requests to Algo Explorer and returns a balance. It's connect, which connects my Algo wallet, returns the first address, and send, which sends an Algorand or ASA transaction and returns a transaction ID. And this is something that we actually added in after we started getting feedback from the Gitcoin bounties. Originally, we only had it function on mainnet. Personally, as a developer, I always like to experiment when things are live because it enhances the stakes of whatever it is you're working on, and there's less room for error. But I understand most developers would prefer to work on the testnet, so we added a simple way to switch between testnet and mainnet, and you can actually see it in the Pipeline Express and Pipeline UI component libraries as a simple toggle switch. And here is an example of exactly what you would do if you're going to be installing or importing this with NPM. And here's a usage example of the on-click handler for a send button. So this is kind of like, getting down inside of it. What exactly is it that we've coded into this that it's able to do? And now we get to Pipeline Express, which is a really, really interesting, really exciting, very light component library. It's ultra light. Sole dependency is the MyAlgo Connect. It has 2 React components with the built-in on-click handlers, and it has access to Pipeline class. Here is the visual front face of what the demo looks like for Pipeline Express. And what we always tell people that are that just want to like get off the ground running immediately with this is that if you go to our GitHub page and you fork the repository for Pipeline Express, you can deploy it directly to Versal. Or if you want to like switch the branding and add, for example, a bank logo and change some of the language so that it more reflects your own company or your own use case, you can do that like super easily. And behind the scenes, what is it doing? So you have two main outputs and you have a couple of different inputs that it's able to do. And as you can see, it has very limited functionality, but what it does very well. It's very fast. It's extremely easy to use. And it's really easy to take apart and see how everything works as well. Now, these are two things that we really wanted to emphasize. It's the context and return to props and why it's important for what we've built. For one thing, there's no need for callback functions, which is something that can add a little bit of bloat to a code base. You don't need the callback functions with what we've made. And it immediately re-renders when it's used with class-based React apps. And the onChange prop also provides functionality for functional components as well. Now, Pipeline UI is the like full-featured big component library. So we have 28 standard UI components that are built on top of styled components. And they come built with Pipeline class, our mini Algorand SDK as well. And what I'd like to highlight here is these 6 additional Algorand components. Now, these 6 components are all hard-coded with functionality to directly work with the Algorand blockchain. You don't have to try to add the SDK separately or anything. If you're using this in your app, it'll be able to work to be able to interact with the Algorand blockchain. So the algo address, which is a QR code with copy to clipboard. There's algo button, which connects to my algo wallet. Algo fetch, which refreshes a table of the 5 latest transaction IDs with links. The algo send button, which was a real challenge because it sounds easy, but it was a little tricky to get it to work really well, but it does now. And it allows you to send payments with algo or ASAs. And we have the ASA list, which is an array of verified ASAs and index numbers. And then SwitchNet is something that I referenced earlier. It's basically a simple toggle switch to transition from testnet and mainnet that you can use, in your deployment environment if you want to demonstrate different parts of functionality within the application you're building. Here's just a brief overview of the included standard UI components that we have already. And as the project grows, we're going to be adding more and more to this as well. This is very much the beginning of where we're headed with it all. And here's just a visual overview of what those components look like represented. And the style for it all is something that is also going to continue to evolve as we learn what the developers that are building with this are really looking for. And here's a visual representation of our 6 hard-coded Algorand components that can connect directly to the blockchain. Now, at this stage, I'll be showing y'all a couple of the things on the Pipeline UI documentation site. And we're going to look at a couple of the different demos that we have on there for you guys to be able to take a look at. So what we're going to look at first right here is this is definitely one of our more advanced things that we have on the documentation site. This is a full code sandbox for the Pipeline class SDK with components represented that are able to connect directly to the network, directly out of the documentation site. So for example, if you wanted to connect to MyAlgo, you can do that automatically. And what it allows you to do, if you want to start experimenting with the Algorand blockchain, is you could start modifying the code base in here to start it. So let's say, for example, you're coming from a different blockchain, Ethereum, and you're like, okay, well, let's try to get off the ground running as quickly as possible with Algorand. Well, if you visit our site, you can do it almost immediately. And it's basically a great way to introduce people to, all of the incredible technology that Algorand has available for them. And as you can see, it has basically everything you need, all the different pieces you need to be able to create an application with Pipeline class. And I was going to show you all a couple of the different hard-coded Algorand components and what they look like on the documentation site. So as you can see right here, this is the transaction, copy a clipboard, the QR code for that as well. And this is the connect to my algo. And as you can see, it actually works directly out of the documentation site. Then we have the algo fetch, which is going to return that array of your most recent transactions. The algo send button here as well. And we also include different examples, and we have, I wasn't showing all this for those, but we have the whole props tables for it as well, for just the stuff we've built already in it that you have access to. And the ASA list, which is just a simple drop down with all the verified ASAs, and we'll continue to update this as we move forward with the project. And we have the SwitchNet toggle, as you can see right there. One thing we're going to be doing with this that I'm actually announcing right now in this office hours is that I'm going to be adding the SVG icons for all of the verified ASAs. We have a, let's see, where's that at? We have a full icon library in here as well that has the entire material design icon library, as well as a bunch of different crypto icons. And you can, like start doing stuff like, for example, you wanted to use Bitcoin or Ethereum or Algorand. But I'll be adding all of the verified ASAs in here as well. So like, let's say, for example, somebody wants to build an application that uses a lot of the Algorand ASAs in it as for like, swapping or anything. Well, you could just, npm install the pipeline icon library, and now you have the visual representation of all the different swappable tokens and everything. And we're gonna create a way for people to request adding their own icons as more and more ASAs get built and our ecosystem gets bigger. Because we really want to make Pipeline UI something that has a lot of community interaction with it. I want people to feel like they're empowered to add to our code base and expand it for all kinds of different use cases that we might not have even considered. Okay, all right, let's see. So now now on the documentation site, we have our iframe set up so that you can still connect to the SDK inside of an iframe, which is something else that's pretty cool that we do. But what we're going to do for this right here is we're actually going to switch to the standalone front face of Pipeline Express. And this is what it looks like. Like, let's say, for example, that you fork our GitHub repository for Pipeline Express. You could simply, modify this to say that bank logo, for example, again. And now you can demonstrate to your colleagues what it would be like if people want to be able to do deposits or anything with this that you've built in like 2 or 3 minutes. You can do that now. Like, let's say, for example, that, just to like show y'all how it works, it's like I could just send myself a 1. You can sign it and everything. And there you have it, your transaction ID that you can then go and look at on Algo Explorer. And this is how simple we want to make the entire development onboarding experience for blockchains. And I think we can really do it. So this is like basically what you're seeing right now with Milestone 1 is like proof of concept. We're proving that it doesn't have to be a major challenge to get off the ground running. When I first got introduced to blockchains, I was like super excited about it. And then I started to look online. I was like Googling, I was like, fastest way to deploy a dApp. And I got directed to a YouTube video for Ethereum that was 4.5 hours long. The YouTube video that was trying to demonstrate how to work with the blockchain. I was like, that is creating a massive barrier to entry where it's like either because of time constraints or because of the investment that a developer has to make that is keeping them on the sidelines. So what we want to do is we want to completely remove all the barriers to entry and allow people to get off the ground running, developing basically immediately with it. And this is just another representation of some of the components and different things that you can do with them. And let's see what else we got here. Let's see. So this is something where we're adding some really interesting new demo ideas. This one, for example, is it allows you to hard code a profile picture into an Algorand address. So like, let's say, for example, somebody wanted to build a social network directly on the blockchain. Well, now you can actually code your profile picture into your address, and it's still using our SDK for it as well. So that's what we've built. That's a brief overview of some of the stuff that we've already accomplished with Milestone 1. What we have right here that we love to highlight is these are some of the applications that other developers are already building. When the Algorand Foundation launched the Gitcoin bounties, they asked us what would be some cool use cases for what we've built. And one thing that I had in mind that I thought would be super interesting is a way to restrict entry to a certain page unless the Algorand SDK is called and returns a balance above a certain amount. So what you see right here is an Algorand demo store. Now, if you click one of these buttons, it'll connect you to my algo, and then it'll do an automatic check to see the balance on the address that you're signed in with. And if your balance is below a certain threshold, it's going to kick you out. But if it's above that threshold, then you can proceed to the next page. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to build proof of stake membership into whatever your application is, right? So like, let's say you want to restrict access to people that aren't actually invested in what you're working on. Well, simply by checking the balance on their specific address, you can make sure that it's only the people that you want accessing your application that actually are. And here on the right-hand side, we have a donation or tipping array with some different hard-coded amounts set up already. So like, let's say, for example, you visit a website or a blog or something like that, and you want to donate, but you want a simple way to be able to do it. You can just, click one of these different amounts and leave a personal note and be able to send it directly. And it's these are like very embeddable things too. We were trying to make everything built in a way that you could like stick it into different types of websites, not specifically ones that are like Gatsby or React as well. And here are some of the different code bases that we got inspiration from and that we're building on top of. And we used a lot of the really exciting or best ones in the business to build different things with, incorporating different things. And as the project progresses, we're going to be expanding this as well to incorporate a broader and broader range of different exciting styles and different functionality. Now, what are we going to be doing next? So after we finish the iteration process for Milestone 1, and we have added a couple extra features, then we're going to get into some really exciting stuff. So right now what we've demonstrated is how you can hard code the simple functions for the blockchain into these React components. But we think that we can scale that up to hard code much larger functionality into these, right? So we've showed you how you can do that with a demo for a simple transaction. But what if you could do that for entire smart contracts? What if you could eventually, in like a Milestone 4 or Milestone 5, be able to hard code the ability to launch a white label exchange or DEX that you can deploy for yourself in like 1 or 2 hours? That is kind of our long-term goal for this. We believe that we can essentially completely take out most of the work to get off the ground running. Now, of course, what we've built is primarily supposed to be used right now as demos. So it allows you to see how something is supposed to work, and then you can deconstruct it, or you can demonstrate how what your vision would work for either investors or for your partners to be able to see. And then you would be able to build on top of that. And that's our demo stage right now. And as the project progresses and it's going to get more and more refined, we want people to eventually be able to build entire like applications, on top of what we're building. And part of what we're guaranteeing with this that has been an issue with a lot of other blockchains and a lot of other development tools is that the developers that build them, they end up moving on to other projects or other blockchains. And then those demos or those code bases get deprecated. And then the developers that are trying to get off the ground running are back to square one, right? Because, what they were planning to use as an example for how to work with a blockchain just doesn't work anymore. So part of what we're guaranteeing is that we're going to continue to maintain this library. And that's actually something that I wanted to emphasize for why this isn't done, for example. So some examples of component libraries: you have Bootstrap, or you have Semantic UI or Blueprint by Palantir. And what you get is you get a lot of really good looking components, but they don't have any built-in SDK functionality. Why is it that the people that build these component libraries don't include it into the components? Well, for one thing, they want to make sure that it appeals to the broadest demographic of people possible. The other thing, though, and this is really important, is that component libraries are notoriously tricky things to not only build but also to maintain, right? So it's a real investment to be able to maintain and upgrade and continue to update them. And what we're doing is we're basically guaranteeing that we're going to do that for this. And as far as we understand it, that's almost non-existent in the development world right now. And we believe it can absolutely transform the blockchain on-ramp experience for new developers in a really, really important way. And here are just a few links that you'll have access to at the end of this presentation that will show you a lot of the different things that we are that we've already built or that we're currently working on, so that you can start working with them as well.
Well, very good. We pasted the link into your deck. That is at pipeline-ui.com/docs/presentation. So all of your deck can be found there. How else should developers be connecting with you and your project?
So a great place to start is on GitHub or through the Pipeline UI website, because that's where we're doing a lot of the development. But also on Twitter, we're pretty active on Twitter, and then Reddit as well. And we're going to start getting really active in the Algorand developer Discord as well moving forward.
So how long do you think it typically takes a brand new developer, or at least a developer who has some experience building front ends, to come to your documentation website and actually spin something up and have their application deployed on Algorand?
Are you saying how long it would take on average?
Yeah.
Probably about 45 minutes. You can do it much quicker if you want to learn a little bit about it before you spin it up. About 45 minutes will give you a pretty good overview. But if you want to spin it up without understanding how it works, you can do it in about 3 minutes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you can either just fork one of our repositories that have the functional demos in them, or you can build a quick backend for an application and then just do npm install for the Pipeline Express component library, for example.
So today, the Algorand Foundation announced that you have received that development award. I know you said that you just started your connection with the foundation in late springtime. Tell us walk us through that. How did you, come up with your idea, and how did you make the connection there with the foundation? Maybe tell other developers who might have projects that they're thinking of getting funding for. How did that process work for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually came to the foundation kind of a way that maybe other ones didn't. So I have a separate project that I've been working on, the larger headline company, and we have the HDL token, which has I think about 4,500 users right now, and they were always really encouraging me to approach the foundation to start working on a project. And it was around the middle of April that I actually jumped into it. And initially, I had approached the foundation about funding a project that was a closed source, kind of proprietary thing that foundations aren't really built to support, because they want to support projects that are open source, but allow other people to start working with them. And I started getting some really good feedback from the foundation that kind of made me rethink my entire approach to development. And it was through that process, it was a very iterative process where we were working together to find a really good solution, something really exciting that we could start working with and start building. And that's where, I asked myself, and I was asking my other developers, I was like, what is the most frustrating thing about blockchains right now, about building on blockchains? And we all said the same thing. It's the lack of documentation and the lack of clear ways to start building, because we kept running into issues where we would be working with demos that would either not work properly, or they would stop working completely, and there was almost no documentation to figure out what was going wrong if we were the ones making mistakes. And they're that's what we need to figure out how to fix. We need to make a really, really strong base for people to get off the ground with this. I did some work experimenting with Ethereum and a couple other ones as well. And every time I kept getting to the same place, I just get so frustrated. I'm like, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to do this. So it's like, it clearly works well. And that's the ironic thing about blockchains, is that they're so like, the technology is so advanced, but it's so elegant the way it works. It's like so much effort has been put into the efficiency of blockchains that there's like something that was missing on the like the front end where the developers get off the ground with it. And that's where we came in.
I got one more question. Where would someone go to get started using this? What's the best spot on your site there?
So let's see here. So what I'm going to show y'all the GitHub. Really built our GitHub in a way that makes it really easy for developers to start working with everything. And it's Headline Design. That's the name of our GitHub and the different repositories that people have access to. So like, let's say, for example, they wanted to spin up a quick custom dApp with Pipeline Express. All you do is you come here to the Pipeline Express repository we have, and you click fork over here, and then it'll fork it into your own code base, and then you can just modify some of the files if you want to add your own branding on it, and then you can just deploy to Versal. Just log into Versal and deploy it, and you can do it in a couple minutes. And that's for the simple demos. That if you want to build it, you can also, if you want to get into the heavier stuff, you could, theoretically fork our entire library and see how all of the different pieces interact, because we have so much of it all in one place. Like, you could technically fork the whole component library and the design site and see how all those things interact, because they will teach you kind of like how, once you have all the components and everything, how you would go about putting those on a website. So like, if you're working with Docusaurus, for example, because we built our documentation site on Docusaurus, we had to do a bunch of modifications to allow for the Algorand functionality that we wanted. So we kind of had to modify a little bit. And if you work with Docusaurus, you can actually see those modifications, and you can start incorporating those into your own platform as well. So one of the questions I saw, it's like talking about other like systems, like why React, for example, if there aren't too many developers that are working with it. Like, that's not the only place we're going with this. That's just where we're starting. We're starting with React because it's a simple thing to get started with. But eventually we could expand this to other things. I saw a comment in here about Flutter. And I actually have a little bit of experience building a Algorand demo with Flutter. Flutter is a challenging beast on its own, though, because of the way it's been built. But I think it's got a lot of interesting utility. And as we expand the project, and because it is open source, we're going to start doing bounties directly from the Pipeline UI website that will encourage other developers to start looking for ways to add in things like Flutter or other systems, that then they would be able to get bounties for being able to basically show how our system of hard coding components could be applied to other code bases as well.
Great presentation today, showing us all here how the Pipeline UI is solving that on-ramp dilemma. You've shown us definitely how developers can come and quickly onboard, build dApps in just 3 minutes, right? And if you want to get started, make sure that you're heading over to pipeline-ui.com. Thanks very much for introducing us to Pipeline UI. We look forward to all of the rest of the advances that you'll have in the upcoming milestones. Thanks very much, and have fun building on Algorand.